Chapter 41. Shortly after the press conference, Coraline had installed her 5 other locks as planned. But this time, Cor performed the operation herself, aided by a newly developed telerobotic surgery suite. Despite the public's initial shock and fear-mongering, the SysLock screening program had found thousands of applicants for the test injections and procedure implantations. Among them was the inquisitive and observant Olivia. Coraline had actually gifted her the black sun hat as a keepsake when Olivia had recovered from her operation. Things at Core HQ were busy, but surprisingly peaceful. Despite the small number of death threats, failed drive-bys, and protests from the general public, or unmods, as Core employees called them. Well, that and Reggie's, once Coraline had co-opted it from Sasha, rebranding it as an ironic inside joke. On this tranquil, lovely day, Olivia was people-watching through the thick, virtually indestructible glass that clad the entire Core campus. Outside, nondescript humans walked in and out of her view. Of course, the occasional bicycle or scooter flying by always piqued her interest. She loved going fast and was about 1 pace cycle away from buying her first sport bike. Suddenly, an alert flashed in her HUD, and she squinted unnecessarily, searching for the interruption to her silent me time. About 200 feet away at the park, a toddler was crying bloody murder, running to his mom and dad to their safe arms. Apparently, a skinned knee was involved, but Olivia could now see far beyond the meager sight she had been born with. "Sis, expand my focus," Olivia thought, and the AI living in her locks obeyed instantly. A circle, big enough to contain the family, enlarged telescopically before Olivia, multiplying her eyes' native focal length. Like a hawk scanning the ground far below, Olivia could now calculate the severity of the skinned knee, and with the help of her Sys and Core, Olivia could also decipher the exaggeration in the child's face and body language. Apparently, it was overacting, delivering a half-cry, half-bluff to its worried parents. Humans, Olivia thought nostalgically with a soft smile. So many false alarms, so much unnecessary drama. Behind her, Mason trotted over from his morning exercise. "Watching the koi?" he asked, still a little sweaty and out of breath. She didn't turn, wouldn't feed the fire of his insinuation, but it was true in a sense. Once you transitioned from unmodified to implanted, everything was just different. Had to be different. As she thought of him, while simultaneously churning through data streams floating in her peripheral sidebars, the 6 black tendrils embedded in her scalp perked up. The mixture of attraction and annoyance she felt towards Mason produced an involuntary, rhythmic pulse of speckled, purple passion flower light from her aroused, tattletale feelers. Mason had to admit that he was jealous. Staring at Olivia's beautiful face and the sentient locks amidst her glossy black hair. He wanted to swim in the same superhuman waters she did, soar to the same mental heights, and most importantly, become her equal. But he was still a level 0, having just passed the entry exam, still waiting to undergo the test. The mere thought of it releasing gremlins behind his toned abs. Now she turned and squinted unnecessarily at him in the playful way he loved. "No," she replied, and he laughed at the insult. An insult because he was still a level 0, which meant under observation at all times. Despite the screening programs Coraline had instituted at all her businesses, unmodded humans posed a severe security risk. It was also an insult because if he were a level 2, like Olivia, he would have known in an instant she was, in fact, lying. But unfortunately for Olivia, he would have also felt her intense, irrational attraction. He would have even known she truly loved him through the same AI, heightened senses she possessed. And yet him, just standing there, all naive, hot and muscled. How dare you, mister? But unfortunately for Olivia, he would have likewise seen the erotic images she had recently incorporated into her sexual daydreams, which had popped up in another sidebar. With a flustered mental command to her sis, they vanished. But their unchecked appearance in her augmented visual field was a painful reminder of why she hadn't moved up to level 3 yet. For advancement within Coraline's culture, discipline was required. If one was ambitious, rising through the organization's levels granted access to higher computational powers and expanded data sets, and ultimately the freedom to have conversations with Core directly, instead of through a censored, regulated, and restricted SIS. But because Mason was still just an unmod, a level 0, Olivia still had time to clean up her act. He doesn't know your mind or see your feeds, but you can still blush, duh, Olivia realized with a huff, turning away so her tell could fade. Smirking, he looked away for a second to give her time to recover her poise. So, when do you test? She asked, desperate to change the unspoken subject. I'm not sure yet, he said, looking more critically at the illuminated, cybernetic digits in her hair as they lollygagged and poked around. Damn, they seem so alive. Autonomous, he thought, getting goosebumps. And more than a little freaky. Mason, are you sure you want the big boss up in your head 24/7? He tried to put the dread of a failed lock surgery out of his mind, but it scooted over, making room for his fear of failing the test. Most recruits would say the strange, constantly evolving globs of test fluid looked like squid ink with a dash of iridescent glitter. The latter was closer to the true nature of the black, microscopic machine slurry. The carbon-based nanites lay silent in suspended animation, floating like ferrofluid in a beet-red nutrient solution. Composed of gold and other elements, the hybrid organisms utilized stem cells for locomotion. With instructions from Core, those same stem cells could be sacrificed and donated to organs and tissues needing repair. The injections had come a long way since the first quick and dirty test that had saved Coraline's life in her garage. In that revolutionary, alchemical moment, Coraline had created her own black seeds. However, despite their many upgrades, the nanites were not without flaws, to Coraline's dismay. Any sudden or unnatural reductions in blood volume, for example, would result in a plummeting IQ. The effect's severity was directly proportional to the ppm of nanites still in circulation. Cut yourself, and well, you got a little dumber. And there was a rare possibility of complications, injury, or death. However, rejection was a far more common outcome, as the candidate's immune system swarmed the nanites, rendering them inoperable. Again, to Coraline's frustration, the biocompatibility rate of the test amongst the Reggies, even amongst her cherry-picked prodigies, was only about 1/5. Mason constantly thought about all this, and was excited about testing, yet scared shitless of the myriad unknowns. But even as he was tempted by the prospect of becoming an uplifted, superior species, it would make backward compatibility with family and friends arduous, if not, at times, impossible. Plus, if Mason didn't pass the test, he already knew what would become of him and Olivia. Rejection of the nanites meant, "You're out of here, kid." Sure, you could still work for Core Enterprises, but not in a secure facility. Sorry, Charlie. However, just attempting the test or the procedure impressed Coraline. It meant you risked your life for the cause and could be a friend or associate, just like the mob. And then you had the recruits who passed the test, but when they went for the procedure, they woke up with cranial plugs instead of locks. If your body rejected the cybernetic appendages or CIS, the composite ceramic plugs and some cosmetic surgery could erase the whole episode. No scars even, just failure. But some of the Reggies willing to do it in the first place still wanted the world to know they were unique. Eventually, a subclass of augmented human culture arose. They self-identified as flats and opted for visible, raised cranial plugs under their scalps should surgery fail. The plugs marked the bearer as a loyal core devotee and were about a thumb's diameter and thick as a nickel. The little fleshy patches were a lot more than conversation starters. Let's just say it looked very favorable during an interview at any of Coraline's subsidiary businesses. It also acted as a backstage pass to events, concerts, weddings, and anything significant within Coraline's realm. But sometimes, unfortunately, funerals as well. When the first recruit coded during surgery, only 3 locks hanging limply from his bloody bare scalp, Coraline had run from the observation platform. Harold had found her in the bathroom, filled with shame and rage, her hand broken from punching the bare cement walls. It wasn't her fault, of course. Yet, the stone soup in her head, made from a recipe of empathic herbal odysseys, surviving addiction, a near-death experience, and deep therapy sessions with Core, had magnified her native intuition and compassion. This meant she was much more nuanced and caring than the usual human-turned-cyborg. Sometimes it just took an innocent death and a bloody wall to bring it out.